Welcome back to another episode of Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles. On this week's episode, we're going to talk all about what's the best beginner snake. Is it a ball python or is it a corn snake? Stick around. Now, if you're new to snakes, you might be thinking, well, what's the best one for me? And I think that it really comes down to a lot of different factors. We're going to go through everything today, from size to feeding to cost to basically everything you need to know. Ball pythons, like my man Pikachu here, come from parts of Africa, western sub-Saharan Africa to be perfectly specific, where corn snakes, like Maisie here, come from the United States. Something important with your decision, no matter what snake you get, is how big is the animal actually going to get. This is a full-grown ball python. It really depends which one wins. Do you want a bigger snake or do you want a smaller snake? Neither one get really big. This is probably a 4-foot, fully developed, fully grown adult male ball python. This is Pikachu. He's an albino morph. And that's basically an average size for a ball python. Ball pythons get between 4 and 6 feet. Some as small as 3 feet, but that's basically average, 4 to 6 feet. So now you know how big a ball python gets. How big does a corn snake get? Now, corn snakes, they are a little bit different. Although they do get roughly the same size, the same length anyway, between 4 and 5.5 feet is about average for a corn snake. They're not going to be as big. Ball pythons are large or medium-bodied to heavy-bodied constrictor-type snakes. Although corn snakes can grow between 4 and 5.5 feet on average, they can be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. Maisie here is about 3.5 feet. She's not full grown yet. And they're a little bit smaller, although they are constrictor snakes also. And just to show you the size comparison, this is a full-grown female ball python. This is Medusa. She is quite a bit heavier when you pick her up. You can feel that she's quite a bit heavier. She's also not as trustworthy, which is why I'm kind of keeping my eye on the sharp end of the snake here. But this is basically what a full-grown female ball python is going to look like. So this round, I can't pick a winner. We're going to call it a tie. Do you want a big snake? Do you want a littler snake? It's up to you. We're going to give this one a tie. Ball python 1, corn snake 1. Now, although size, I couldn't give a definitive answer which one wins, I think enclosure size is something that we can both agree on. The smaller the space taken in your house, the more likely you are to take that animal, for a beginner anyway. Ball python, like you see here, you're going to want something like a 55 gallon. That is my recommendation. You don't really want to go much smaller than that, 50. If you can get a 50 breeder, I know some places have those. Where a corn snake, you can get away with a 40 gallon breeder. This is very common, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this at all. That's a fantastic size enclosure for a corn snake. Now, if you want to keep them in a tub system, a corn snake, generally you can keep in a 28 quart Sterilite, and a ball python is going to need a 41 quart. So it is a little bit bigger of a space that you need. I'm going to give this one to the corn snake. Behavior is another really important thing too, and this is a terrible example that I don't have a snake in my hands and I'm talking about this, because normally both are very placid. The corn snake that I had, I knew she was cage defensive going in. I just tried to pick her up and she was having none of that. The number one rule when you're feeding snakes is don't handle the snakes while the food's in the next room thawing, and I think that's why both of them are looking at me like I'm food. In general, both snakes are very placid. Ball pythons are very unlikely to strike at you, as are corn snakes. Ball pythons are called ball pythons because they ball up. They protect their head, and that's their defense mechanism. They can bite you still, and they might. Everyone's an individual. But corn snakes, in my opinion, are more likely. They want to fly away from you. They're very skittish. They're flighty. So I would say that they're unlikely to bite you as well. But if you get bit by one, I'd rather get bit by a corn snake every time. So when it comes to handleability and behavior, it really depends on what you want. You want a snake that's bigger, that's going to hold on to you, that you can just let sit there on your lap and it's never going to move and it's just going to kind of be like a potato? Or do you want a more flighty snake like a corn snake, which is going to move around a lot more? It's going to take a little bit more work to keep in your hands. And for that reason, I think for a beginner, this is a beginner snake challenge. If you want something that isn't going to be as hard to handle, I would definitely go with the ball python. So I'm going to give that point to the ball python. And if you're keeping score, that means ball python 2, corn snake 2, we're tied after 3 categories. Lifespan is a really interesting thing that you want to consider as well, because if you want a pet that you're going to take care of until the day it dies, this is obviously important. And there is a big divide between the two. And I'm going to say that the longer the lifespan, the better, in my opinion, because if you're going to invest money into an animal, especially if you're going to get into a higher end morph, like we're going to discuss at the end, you're going to want this thing to be around for a long time. And both are very long lived. Corn snakes, like Maisie here, I'm hoping that she's going to live a full life, and if she does, that's between 15 and 20 years on average in captivity. In the wild, you're looking at maybe 4 years if you're lucky, but there's predators and all sorts of different things that kill snakes in the wild. Ball pythons here, like Medusa, they're going to live between 20 and 30 years in captivity. Basically the same, about 4 years in the wild from the research that I've done, but 20 to 30 years is more typical for ball pythons. They're a little bit longer lived, so I'm going to give this one to the ball python, which means ball pythons 3, corn snakes 2. Now let's move on to heat and humidity. If you want a snake that is easy to care for, which is what I recommend for beginner, there's an easy, clear winner in this category. Ball pythons, you're going to need a very hot, more humid type environment for them. Their humidity is going to be well over 50%, especially when they need to be shedding. When they're in shed, it's going to be a little bit more humid, and all year round, it's going to be more humid as well. And their hot spot needs to be a lot warmer than the corn snake, because, well, the corn snake's not from Africa. They're from a part of the world where it does get cool in the wintertime. So the corn snake is going to be a little bit cooler, and the ball python is going to be a little bit warmer. And, of course, the corn snake doesn't need a humidity level 50 to 60%. You're okay 35 to 50% with a corn snake. For this reason, it's a lot easier to keep a corn snake for a beginner especially. This one goes to the corn snake, and again, we're knotted up 3-all. Now let's discuss the diet of these two snakes. There's a clear winner here as well. Ball pythons are more fun to feed in my opinion because it's a larger prey item. You're going to feed a medium-sized rat or really big females, sometimes a large-sized rat, where with corn snakes, you're going to be feeding small rats even into adulthood. Maybe a medium if you get a gigantic corn snake. I've never had this happen before in my collection anyway. So for this reason, it's going to be cheaper to feed a corn snake. Corn snakes are smaller animals, eat smaller meals. They're going to eat exactly the same frequency, in my opinion, between every 7 to 10 days once they're adults. So I'm going to give this one to the corn snake. So the corn snake goes in the lead again. 4 for the corn snake, 3 for the ball python. Let's talk about morphs. Now, morphs are paint jobs, the way that your snake looks. And this could be something as simple as an albino, like my main man Pikachu here, or the corn snake that I have, Maisie. She's just an anutheristic or axanthic, whatever you want to call it. Just means that she's missing the red pigment in her skin. And this just means that whatever your snake wants to look like. Do you want something that looks super fancy or normal or whatever the case is? If you're going for normals, it's going to be basically the same price range. Very easy to find with both cases. But with morphs, I'm going to go and say that there's a lot more and a lot more beautiful morphs with the ball python. There's been more work put into this, and with the corn snake, there's definitely a lot of work put into that as well. Some people might get upset that I said it like that. It's not real. I don't really mean that one has more work than the other one. I just think that, in my opinion, ball pythons, there's just more to them, and they're more crazy and more unique than corn snakes. Although very cool, I don't think they really measure up. I'm going to give this one to the ball python for the most crazy, unique morphs out there. So now we're all knotted up at 4 apiece. And our last category, cost and availability. All this means absolutely zero if you can't get your hands on one of these snakes. So, which is more easily available? Which one is a little bit less costly? Well, it depends. If you want a normal, like we discussed before, it's going to be about the same. I mean, I literally have bought a python, a ball python, that was a normal, a very small one for $5 before. Corn snakes, you can buy all the time for 15 bucks. So it's basically next to nothing. However, if you wanted to get into the high-end morphs, this is where I'm going to judge this one. Even in the medium morphs, if you want an albino corn snake, it's cheaper than an albino python, ball python. So I think with this one, especially when you're talking about higher-end morphs, ball pythons, you're never going to see a corn snake that costs as much as a scaleless ball python. Scaleless corn snakes you can get in Canada, in my area, for 650 bucks. In the States, even cheaper. So with a ball python, you're paying thousands for this same snake. Even a scaleless head ball python is a lot more expensive than a full-on scaleless corn snake. So to break the tie in our last category, when it comes to cost and availability, this one definitely goes to the corn snake, and there's your winner. 4 for the ball python, 5 to the corn snake, just by a thin margin. I think that if you're a beginner, you want to know what the best snake is for you, or the best snake that I would recommend anyway, it's the corn snake. But take that with a grain of salt. Just because I said it's the best one doesn't mean it is. I just think that if you're a beginner, you don't have an experience with snakes, it's easier, and it's just, there's less barrier to entry with a corn snake, and that's your winner. So thank you very much for watching this Thursday's episode of Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles. We do these types of videos every Monday and every Thursday. Did you like the video? Did I forget something? Did I get something wrong? Put in the comment section below. And what should I talk about next week? Put that down there too. Until next Monday, I'll see you later.